Hello everybody, Hawk here. Today, let's talk about how to connect your external hardware sound modules to Ableton Live. We're talking about drum machines, maybe some old MIDI sound module you found on the used market, and of course, semi-modular devices like those being made by Behringer. So I'm going to show you all of the connections, both the audio and complete MIDI control from Ableton Live to your external sound modules, and then I will step you through the process of recording some parts, creating the audio clips, throwing them into the arrangement view, and then I'll do a quick demo of a song that I've produced in this process. By the way, this video is in partnership with a brand new, really cool online magazine called Synth and Software. It's not a sponsored video, it's just like a casual promotional effort with a bunch of old friends of mine, writers and editors from the old magazines like Remix Magazine and Electronic Musician Magazine. So yeah, so these guys and gals really know what they're doing, and they live and breathe synths and music production like I do. So sign up, it's a free magazine, and you'll never miss out on a gear review or column or great tips and tricks. I will post a link below so you can sign up for free. Having said that, let's get to it and plug these devices into Ableton Live and create something. Here we go. So let's talk about what we're going to need here. Obviously, we're going to need a computer. Here's my laptop. This is to run Ableton Live, yes. And we're going to need an audio interface. This one works great. It's got a couple of inputs here with trims on them for our line inputs from our sound modules. And very, very important, we are going to need MIDI inputs, traditional old style MIDI inputs and outputs on the back here, specifically MIDI outputs to control our sound modules, our external sound modules that are the vintage sound modules that don't have the USB ports on them. So the Behringer semi-modulars have the USB ports, but some of the old vintage units don't have USB ports. So got to have that MIDI to work with the really old gear. And I've got a drum machine here, the Cyclone TT-606, a nice little clone of the TR-606, the classic Roland analog drum machine. So I like this one a lot. And this one actually only has MIDI on it, as you can see in the back there. And then I've got the Pro-1 here, the Behringer Pro-1. Love this synth, that's great. The Model D over here, there's the Model D. And this thing back here, right here, it's a TX7, you can see that. And the old Yamaha TX7, so it's basically a DX7-1 in a tabletop, in a desktop unit, and it only has MIDI in on it as well. So that's what I'm going to use, and let's plug this stuff in. I should also mention it's nice to have some sort of MIDI control keyboard to play your parts in. Okay, so for the drum machine, I've got here, you can see I've got audio output going to the audio interface, and I've got MIDI input here going to the MIDI output on the audio interface. So MIDI output of the audio interface is MIDI output jack to the MIDI input on the drum machine, and then the audio input of the drum machine is there. And then over here for the Model D, that's the audio input on the Model D. And there's the Model D's audio output there. And for the MIDI for the Model D, for the Behringer Model D, we're using USB. The first thing we'll want to do before we do
anything else is make sure that the devices are being recognized by the operating system. These are USB compliant devices. I'll open up the audio MIDI setup. There it is, the audio box USB right there with the MIDI I/O and the Model D that I also plugged in. Let's head back to Ableton Live. And in Ableton Live, we want to make sure that the devices are being recognized in the preferences. So there is our MIDI preferences, and there is the Model D. Now we need to send MIDI information out to the external hardware devices. So we'll turn on the Model D, output to the Model D, and output to the audio box's MIDI output port. One other thing to do while we're in here is to make sure that our buffer size is set nice and low. Now, you can get away with 512 samples, but really, these are external hardware devices that are generating the sound. So the MIDI is going out to the external hardware devices. The external hardware devices are generating the sound, and that's coming back into your computer, and then you're monitoring it. So you want to make sure that this is set as low as possible, as low as your computer can handle it. I like 64 samples. I think that works well. All right, now I could use the external instrument device here for controlling external instruments. And we can see here that, for example, there's my Model D. I could assign that's the MIDI output to the Model D, and then the Model D is coming in input 2, and we can select it there. But the thing is, I'm going to use actual individual MIDI tracks and audio tracks. This makes it easier for me to record MIDI data on the MIDI track and then record the audio to the audio track or clips in the audio track. And this will become more obvious as we progress with this process. Okay, so let's start by deleting this external instrument track and creating another MIDI track. And I'll put this MIDI track here. And this MIDI track will be my drums. So we'll label it drums. And this one will be my Model D, the synth bass line. And I'll label it Model D. And then let's set up our output to the drum machine here. So that's going through the audio box right there. And the input from the drum machine here is input 1. And the Model D, the output for the Model D, will be going to the Model D, of course. And the input for that is also already set, and that's set to 2. So we'll arm the track here, and we'll press play, and we see MIDI going through there. We see audio coming in channel 1. We don't hear it because we have to set the monitor input here. There it is. So we're good for the drum machine. And next, let's do the Model D. And the same thing, we need to set my input monitoring mode and record arm the track, and we're good to go on that. And for the audio tracks, keep everything labeled because otherwise it's going to get pretty confusing. I'm going to call this drums. Notice I'm using capital for the audio, all caps for the audio, and lowercase for the MIDI. That helps me when I look at the tracks, I can immediately see just from the name of the track what it is. Is it MIDI data or is it audio waveforms? And then this one is the Model D. All right, so let's record some MIDI here. We have so those are all the sounds that are available on the TT-606.
And I could play them together in a track. But what I want to do is I want to just create a 4 on the floor, and I want the individual drum sounds. So let's set this to a nice dance beat. Let's say 128 BPM. And the click is on, and let's just lay down a kick drum for a few bars. So how does that sound? That's perfect. Now we'll do a snare drum. And one thing that's nice is I can create another MIDI track and address the same drum machine and get a little bit more detailed here and say, this will be my snare drum track. So this will be MIDI. So we'll call it snare. And on this, I'll just play the snare drum note, which will be D1. This one was the kick drum. And same thing here, I want to go out to the audio box and arm this, and now I'll just play the snare drum here. So here we go. And let's do that for the hi-hats too. So insert another MIDI track. And this one for the hi-hats, there are actually 3 MIDI notes to work with here. So again, out to the audio box USB, and we'll arm this track, and we'll name this hats. And so 3 notes that I'll play. Like that. Let's play this. That works. Let's take a listen. So I've got some variety in there. I've got individual MIDI tracks. I'm going to record those as audio pretty soon. But first, let's put down some bass. So now for the Model D, I would like to add one of the MIDI effects here. And the one I really like is something simple, like just the Bach 16th notes. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it on top of the MIDI track. And now when I play this, it will sound like, let me arm the track, this. All right. And so let me come up with a bass line here with the beat, right? And we will record it. Here we go. Take a listen. I am totally happy with this right now. I think I will just do maybe one long C note here as a variation.
All right, now it is time to go ahead and record these parts to audio on clips so that I can later slice and dice these up the way I'd like to. And to do that, I want to record arm the drums first here, and I'll stop all these clips here. And I'll just record a little bit of clip from each one of these. And then I will be able to free up the inputs for the audio box here to plug in the next set of synthesizers. So we'll start with the kick drum. By the way, you can name the individual ones here too, like kick, snare, hats, those will work. Okay. So there's my kick drum. And we will label this with all caps, kick. And then the next one we'll do is the snare drum. And of course, one thing that's really nice, so I'll call this one snare 1, is to do some modulations on here. And we have a tone button here so that I can play this. And if I play this and listen to this, so I'll do an alternative on this snare drum here while I play with the tone button. That was nice. So that will be snare 2. And we'll do one for the hats now. The same thing, I can play around with the tone button here, so I'll do that. And I just need to make sure that this is switched to the hi-hats. And we'll go ahead and record the hi-hats. That should be plenty for the hi-hats and hats. And I think I'll do one more version with the kick drum where we get a little crazy with the kick drum. So I'll select the kick drum here and then play with the tuning of the kick drum for this one. That should do it. Now let's record the Model D. So we'll record arm the Model D track here and make sure that we've checked our input levels here. That looks good, and let's record it. It's ready to go. we're going to do the same thing here with the next one, which had some different varieties here. It's always good to have nice little ending notes like that you can work with when you're on your tempo grid doing the arrangement. So for this next one here, I think what I'd like to do is mess around with my filters here, specifically my filter cutoff right here. And while I'm recording it, I will play with the filter cutoff. So here we go. That should do the job.
So here's the TX7, my DX7 in a box. And on the back here we have MIDI input coming from the audio box. And there's my audio output going to the audio box. Over here on the audio box, we've got our audio input on 1 coming from the TX7. And on the back here, there's our MIDI output going to the TX7. This is our audio input on 2 there coming from the Pro-1. This will be my lead synth here. And on the Pro-1, we have MIDI coming from USB. And then there, of course, is my audio output.
The next thing I'll do is let's set up 2 MIDI tracks, right? And one MIDI track will be the TX7. So this will be for my chords. And the other MIDI track will be the Pro-1. And that one will be for some sort of lead synth, I think. And we want to go MIDI to the audio box for the TX7. And MIDI to the Pro-1. And next, let's set up a couple of audio tracks. So this one will be for the TX7. And this one will be for the Pro-1. And let's start off with some chords. So we want to make sure that our monitor input is set. And we've record armed the TX7. And let's see what I got here. Maybe a little bit lower octave here. That'll work. And let's record something. So here is the MIDI track, and let's do it. That should be plenty. you know, that is what it is. It's just a bunch of chords. I'll be able to slice and dice those chords up, and we'll work with that. So next, let's do some Pro-1 synthesizers. So that would be the lead synth. I want to make sure that we've set this to in, and we've armed the track. Let's see if we've got some sound here. That is armed, and the input, look at that. The input there needs to be set to 2, and then oh, you know, we should check to make sure this is in tune, because whenever you're dealing with something that is analog, we should check to make sure that it's in tune. And Ableton Live has the handy tuner. There it is. So we'll drag that onto the Pro-1 track and make sure that it is in key. And there's the master tune right there. And that's nice and in key, and we will go with that. All right, let's just play some ad-lib and... All right, so now that we've got all these parts done that I can work with, I'm going to record these. And I want to record on my TX7 track here for the chords. There's no real-time controls on this in terms of filters. It's just a vintage digital synth. So I'm just going to record it. Here we go. And that will do it for that. We'll do a couple takes here. So the first take, and then we'll also grab the cutoff filter here and play around the cutoff filter as I'm recording this. There's some cool stuff in there. Also, remember, we just recorded all these takes, so we definitely want to save this. And now what I'll do with these is I will take them and I will drag them over to my arrangement view here. There's my Pro-1 track, and I will switch to the arrangement view and then start editing all of these little sections together to create my song structure.
So yeah, that's pretty much how you do it. How you make all the connections, sequence your MIDI clips, make your edits, do your quantization, record those clips and drag them into the arrangement view to arrange your song, and then mix and master to taste. So let's take a listen to what I put together. But before that, of course, I have to say, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. If you are down with synth and software, I know you are because you're watching this, right? Sign up for the new free online magazine. You can't beat that. And also, I put together a brand new 80s music producer t-shirt that I'm kind of into. And if you like it, go ahead and pick up a copy. There'll be a link below. All right, so let's take a listen to the finished product. Here we go.